If you're just getting started out on Zeus for astrocartography, I'll show you around so you can get familiar with the program as well as customize things to how you like. So to start off, what you're seeing on my screen probably will look a little different from yours if you're new. I have already gone through some customizing of my own, so I'll show you what modifications I've made so you can follow along or adjust how you see fit. So what you see here is a chart based on the current moment. You can see under dial 1, the base dial radix is here and now, the current date and time based in Moscow, Russia. The other dials 2, 3, and 4 are where you can add outer wheels to your base dial, your base chart. And outside of it, on the white screen, we have other elements as part of our scene. In my case, I've chosen to only show an aspects grid. When it comes to navigation, we have on the top text-based navigation, and below that, a bunch of shortcut icons. Essentially, you can reach most places through one or the other. And on the right is a little bit more navigation, a few more shortcuts. That is more useful for astrocartography, where you can quickly access objects, how you want your aspects, using geodetic equivalents or not, and going to time dynamics, for example. But we'll look at those a little more individually as we go. While we're talking about navigation, you can use the shortcuts F2 to F6 to modify what you see on the screen. So for example, F2 is going to hide the entire top and the right, so all the menus. F3 hides the text-based navigation. F4 holds the very bottom, if you can notice that very bottom line. And F6 will hide the icon navigation. Just a couple more hotkeys. We have the numbers 1, 2, and 3. By pressing 1, we can show the event pool, which I usually have hidden. We can see the current event and previous events we've taken and can double-click and go back to them, as well as easily switch between different sessions. And if you don't want to see that anymore, just press 1. Number 2 is hiding the dials or showing them, and number 3 is hiding or showing the far right-hand menu. So you can customize your screen based on what menus and controls you want to see, and this also applies when we go to the map. You can control the same settings there as well. So, to get started, under Configurations, make sure you're in ACG. This is already set up for astrocartography and will make everything easier for you. Also check that you have auto-save checked so that any modifications you're making are going to be saved, and when you close out and you come back, it's going to be as you left it. So after that, let's check out the database. We can get there through this icon here, database. You can see from Zeus that there are some preset natal charts you can use. In this case, I'm going to add a file. So right-click anywhere in the white space. You can add a folder or add a file. And I'm going to call it Nations because I'm going to add the USA birth chart. So I've created the file, and now whenever I create a birth chart, it will save there. So dial 1 is on the transits. Oh, one more thing before we go there. Whenever you open Zeus and you see the current transits, it's going to be based on Moscow, Russia. That's the default location. So if you want to change that to where you are, you can go to Settings, General Settings, and then Place, and then type in where you are. If the place that you're at doesn't pre-populate, because you're in a very small town or something, you can type it, but you need to manually add in the coordinates, and then hit Save. And then you'll see it update once you close and come back, or you have a little shortcut here, press this button to reload dials with current data. And so now they're all the current moment in Portugal. So let's now create a natal chart. So under the first dial, drop down, under event, go to new. I'm going to create the USA birth chart. So I'm giving it a name, and the date format is the day and then the month. And the time is also 24-hour format. So July 4th, 1776 at 17:10 in Philadelphia. And I'm also going to save it so that it saves to the database. And then hit create. And now I've got my natal chart. So to adjust the layout, everything that you see here with the chart in the grid, you have some other options too. So you can right-click anywhere on the white space and then go to layout, or you can go to settings in the nav and then layout. Now it highlights all the elements in red, and you can click and drag, put them wherever you want. You can adjust the size of the chart and check on or check off certain data elements you want to include. This is also where you can include a background image instead of a white screen. Under calculation tables, this is also more data you can choose to include or not. You can go through those and then hit OK once you selected what you'd like to include. Next, we'll look at our chart preferences. So again, go to settings and then chart, or click anywhere on the white space and then go to chart. Starting from the first tabs on both sections, here you can make some adjustments to your chart in multiple ways. The changes I made were under dials, where I decided to include the retrograde symbols so I can see if they are station direct, or retrograde. Also decided to include minutes so that the degrees do not round up if there are minutes. And I've also checked off with zodiac sign in case there are a lot of planets in one sign and it's so full that it spills over into the next house and sign, so it's clearer. You can also make modifications on the belts. For example, maybe you want Roman numerals instead of numbers for the houses, or you want to see decans and terms. You can make cusp modifications. Under aspects, I've chosen to include the symbols, so those are easier to identify. You can further edit them by clicking on this gear icon, and you can adjust the thickness of the lines, as well as making them dependent on the orb, or specifying if they are exact, how thick you want them to be, and so on. Going to the top tabs here, this is where you can adjust the size of elements. Size of objects refers to the planets and other planetary objects in the chart. Offset, how close they are to the center, how large the coordinates are, and so on, as well as adjusting the size of dials and belts, the house elements, and so on. The next tab is the chart palette. I believe this is one other difference. I've chosen the transparent set, so because I prefer seeing the elements of the zodiac signs, like green for Earth, easier to see. But you can choose any of these sets that you want, and you can also modify them yourself. For example, if you want a different red for the fire signs, you double click and drag your mouse around to whatever color you want. You can modify it through multiple different ways. On this tab is the environment theme. It's on default, but say you want to have a dark mode, you can make it black or choose some other option. And then this tab is where you can control what information you see in the tooltip when you hover over planets and when you hover over aspects and cusps. So for the planets, I'm including coordinates, rulers, exaltation, and so on. You can control all of that here. Some other preferences you might want to make are house system, the orb of influence for your aspects, whether you're using tropical or sidereal. The way you can do that is to go to Settings and then Preferences, or right click on the white background, go to Preferences. And some of these, there are shortcuts, for example, houses here or aspects. So I'm going to right click and go to Preferences. Here's where you can go to sidereal. Under house system is where you can change to whatever you like. Under dignities, you can control what they are. For example, maybe you want to change to modern rulership. You can do that here. As well as triplicities, terms, and so on. Under aspects, there's different sets to determine the orb of influences. For me, I've just chosen traditional for all of them. And you can modify them yourself by going to the gear icon, and you can select which aspects you're using. You can change the color of them and how large the orb is. So I can just click one and type it, and it's saved automatically. And on your own, you can explore the other customizations, but this should be a nice base to get you ready to go. Next, to manage what objects are included, as for angles and planets and other objects, we can go to the drop-down and then Objects. And here we can check off what we want included or not. And if there's an object not listed here that you would like to include, you can go to the shortcut Objects here, or Settings, Object Catalogs, Main Objects. And from here you can check off what else you'd like to include as part of your ACG object set. Here you can also change the color of objects. For example, maybe I want to make the moon pink, or drag my mouse to pick a random color. You can do that as well. Next we'll go to the Astro Map. So you can go there by navigating to Scene, Geomap, or to Geomap, the icon. From here, we can also modify what we're seeing with the F shortcuts, like F2 to completely see the map and the charts, or F3 to hide a bit of nav, and so on to F6. In other videos, I go over all the features for astrocartography that you can do here on Zeus, but in this video, I'll go over some settings. For settings on the Astro Map, we just right-click, and we have all our options here. We can go to other settings and control what angles we want to see or not. For example, just midheaven lines. If we want to do mundane or zodiacal, seeing aspects, checking off which ones we want included or not. The font size of the names of the lines. Or under params, controlling which ones we see or not, their latitude, and which planets to include for them. Some other details are, if we right-click, we can include a coordinate grid, so we can exactly measure. We can also turn on the Severial grid, and over here, check GE for geodetic equivalence. Here is also where you would use the other dials for CCG, cyclocartography. So turn on dial 2 by checking it, and you're going to select progression, and turn on dial 3 for transits. Since these are automatically tied to the inner planets on dial 2 and the outer planets on dial 3, whenever you want to look at transits for all the planets, you can use that on dial 4. So, going back to the chart, I can see those transits here. Outside of the map and charts, one other thing you would use regularly with CCG are the time dynamics, which you can get to by control time dynamics, the clock icon here, or the clock icon on the far right. So clicking that, I have that open. I can have saved my settings for how much time I want to pass whenever I hit the play button to animate time passage. Remember to always check that this is on the second, third, or fourth dial so that you're not accidentally changing the birth data. But if you do, we've got this button to undo. So going to 4, I can see transits, for example, moving a day at a time. And then resetting with this icon, clock with a green back arrow. So now that we've seen all the main parts and customized a little bit, one other detail that can maybe make your workflow a little easier is to set up some short keys. So under Settings, go to Shortcut Key Manager. And there's some details here that you can read through, but you can control what shortcut keys, hotkeys, whatever, will take you to where you want to go. So for myself, I've made Chart C and GeoMap G, so I can easily go back between one or the other, as well as T for time dynamics to quickly bring that up. Having these shortcut keys might be helpful for you. And when you've got everything all together and you're done for the day, before you close out, you can save your session so that when you come back, everything is as you left it. The dials are as you left them, and you don't have to go through each one individually and load the data again. So we can go to Session, Save Session, and I'll call mine USA ACG. And I've already done this, so I will replace it. And so now you're all set. Your configurations are saved to the ACG configuration, and your natal chart is saved along with your session. I hope this was helpful in being able to customize Zeus for your own needs. And feel free to check out my other videos to get more detail on how to do astrocartography in Zeus.